Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
So there I was, episode 20, with Father, our very first non-gold wing aviator. And what a great interview, hey, Repete?
Absolutely. This one's titled, The Eagle Was Grounded. Man, I can't believe we're up to episode 20 already. This is awesome. But yeah, so we had an Air Force type with us. We don't discriminate. Everybody's welcome here.
That's right.
And he spent 23 years flying the F-15 Eagle. And he was the guy that was out there for the first time the airplane got grounded worldwide for, did he say 3 or 4 months? It was a long time.
It was a long time.
Until they figured out what happened.
The incident he was involved in grounded the airplane, and it's quite a story. It's quite a story.
He was just the primary witness. He didn't cause it.
Yeah. Well, he's a great storyteller. He had a fantastic career. And I didn't know him when he was on active duty, but I met him whilst we were both employed by our same air carrier. He was still in the Guard back then, as was I. So that's how we got acquainted.
And it was a accidental career, so to speak. College roommate talked him into taking a test.
Another great story.
He's the one that went on to fly. So there you go. Absolutely. Everybody sit back, strap in tight, grab the ejection handle, make sure you're not sitting on it, and enjoy the show. So there I was, episode 20, coming at you now.
There I was.
That's how every great aviation tale begins. You're listening to the podcast, so there I was. Repete here in New Hampshire, at least for one more day, joined by my co-host, Fig. Where are you at today, Fig?
Well, Repete, I am still in Denver, but only for another 28 hours probably. But I'm really excited to say we have with us, it's kind of a historical day because, number one, we have Father Mike, but number two, this is our first non-gold wing aviator interview.
Lead wings, here he comes.
Because Father came from another branch of the service. So, Father, Tell us, how did you get into aviation? What brought you to want to fly airplanes? How did that start?
The biggest thing, brothers, was ever since, like a lot of guys, I've always known I wanted to drive airplanes since I was, 4 years old. And went to school up in New Hampshire, started to learn how to fly, and then got my commission through ROTC. And that is a whole story in itself because I never wanted to fly militarily. A college roommate wanted to, and I said, as mutual support, I'll go take that Air Force qualifying test with you. I took it. And then about 3 months later, I get a call. It says, hey, if you join 2-year ROTC, we will send you to pilot training. So that's how I ended up coming into the Air Force. I was, I'll date myself. I was commissioned in 1985 and then went to undergraduate pilot training at Vance Air Force Base.
Nice.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, we're all kind of about the same time frame,
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So where did you fly in New Hampshire? Where'd you get? I'm assuming you got your private here in New Hampshire before you.
I did. Yeah. The school's no longer open. It was Hawthorne College in a little town of Antrim down near Hillsborough, New Hampshire.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So on a whim, basically, you went and took the. Was it for ROTC or was it for flying? Like the AQT FAO.
Yeah, it was that the AFOQT test. For POTS. Yep, and scored pretty good on it. And good enough to get offered a pilot slot. So at the time I was 20, and I was like, I've got nothing else to do, so why not? Let's give it a try.
There you go.
Right.
So I have to ask. Did your roommate pass the test, or did he not go fly? In which case, he dragged you into it, and you got to fly.
It's always everybody always asks that question. No, he did not.
No,
but he ended up having a great aviation career. He retired about 2 years ago out of United.
Okay. Oh wow. So he went and flew. He flew anyway, but just not in the military.
Absolutely correct. That's all correct.
Okay. Where did you go through primary flight training with the Air Force? What base?
I started down at Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. Enid by the Sea is what we called it because there is no water there. The only thing to do was to do your best flying and then drink a lot of beer in the weekends. That's about all there was to do.
The only water there is coming out of the tornadoes, right?
Exactly right. And as a New York boy, first time ever out in the Midwest, I couldn't believe the size of those thunderstorms and hail and everything else busting out of those clouds. It was a good time. I had a lot of good friends down there, and
nice.
It was a good time.
So T-37s and T-38s both right there at Vance.
Yeah, back then, yep. It was the old 6-month course, 6 months T-37s, then 6 months of T-38s. And then after 12 months, they rack and stack you, 1 through, however many graduate. My class had 65 kids, I think, and we graduated 35. Yeah, I started out with the standard back in 85 was when I started. It was T-37s, 6 months, and then T-38s, another 6 months. And then at the end of that, the instructors by your performance, so standard military training, they rack you 1 through however many graduated.
Okay.
We started, like I said, with 65 guys, and we graduated 30. And I was fortunate. Yeah, it was a big washout.
That's a lot of attrition.
Yeah,
well, that's back in the Reagan time when they had tons of money.
Okay.
Okay. So what did you guys call the T-37?
We call it the Tweet.
Okay. We called it the world's only 6,000-pound dog whistle.
Absolutely correct. It was, I tell you what, the thing was a lot of fun to fly, but boy, was it was a mess. It was the loudest thing known to mankind.
Yeah, that high-pitched, really high-pitched.
It was a mess.
Listeners, I urge you to Google the T-37 and look for a video of that thing, and you'll see what we're talking about. Oh yeah. It hurt to hear one go by.
Yes.
So do you have any good T-37 student recollections that either terrified you or shocked you or
I think
you never forget about the T-37?
Oh, hell, I'll tell you one real quick here. I didn't tell my instructors or anything, but it's like we're out there on our solo rides, and they're like, all right, you're going to go out there and do some loops, a split S, and one thing they failed to tell us way back when was the T-37 has about one of the fastest G onsets of any little airplane.
That's got straight wing, right? Just a straight wing.
And all I'll tell you is that I was out there doing my maneuvers like a good student, and I'm doing a split S. And I will say I'm alive and talking today, but I'm missing some time from that sortie.
You G-locked yourself?
I didn't say that. I just said I'm missing some time. And I never told.
No.
So I told my bros through pilot training, but I was like, I don't know what the F happened, but I'm missing some time.
Yeah. Self-correcting, don't do that again. So
absolutely.
Did you wear a G suit in that airplane?
Not the T-37, no.
Yeah. So
no.
Wow.
You had the old style parachute strapped on your back. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly
I got G-locked in the T-34. We didn't wear one in that either, but the instructor was flying and he put on 4 Gs like instantaneously.
And you weren't ready.
And the next thing I know, I wasn't ready. I had no idea it was coming. And the next thing I know, I'm like in this dream state, green field, and all of a sudden I'm waking up and I'm in an airplane. I'm going, you got it. He goes, yeah, I got it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was like I said, it's scary-ass time. Scariest time.
Yeah. Do that
what
once.
What about the T-38? Any
T-38,
fond memories of that?
The plane was a blast to fly. I mean, it was...
Not only that,
the damn thing
I'll give the Air Force that one. That's a cool looking jet.
It looks fast sitting on the ramp, man.
It does. And then their new replacement, I think it's called the Red Hawk, that's going to be a badass little trainer. That thing is
nice, really,
really nice. I'm trying to remember, the T-38. I don't really have any good stories from that. It's tough to remember that one. I just know it was just a blast to fly, and I do know whenever we would go out in the airspace, you just go supersonic and do aileron rolls. That's about all you did as a student.
Well, Father, obviously, you did well enough to select fighters, which, I don't know what percentage of. So I know you had a big attrition rate, so 60 to down to 30. So of the 30, what percentage of guys got fighters, and then
in my class drop, I was what's called O1 class, which was the beginning of the FY year. So we had two F-15s, two 16s, and two A-10s. Which was 6 fighters for the class. And what they did is they asked the first guy, they go, hey, what do you want to fly? The second guy, what do you want to fly? Third guy, what do you want to fly? I was fortunate enough to graduate in the top 2. And I said, I really didn't know what I want to fly. And my instructor, great guy, he's like, dude, you need to fly an F-15. And at the time, I had no idea what an F-15 even looked like or did. So I was like, okay, I'll take an F-15. So we called it in the Air Force. We had assignment nights, big ass party, and they called my name up. Lieutenant Flanagan, you've got a F-15, and we got drunk as all get up, and off I was leaving pilot training to go take a look at my first F-15 because I had never seen one.
So did you know where you were going after the F-15 RTU?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, at assignment night, also they gave you. They said, "Hey, you'd have an F-15 to Langley or F-15 to Bitburg," but that was all subject to change once you graduated F-15 school. Which
needs of the military.
Exactly.
And
right.
RTU, that's an acronym, stands for
back then it was
Replacement Training Unit, or FTU, Flight Training Unit.
Exactly, that's what the Air Force calls it. Yep, that's what we called it back then.
The Marine Corps calls it a RAG, Replacement Air Group, but it's the same thing. It's the training squadron for your tactical airframe.
You correct? Got it, brother. That's exactly what it is.
And yours was at Tyndall? No.
Well,
Tyndall?
Back then we had so many F-15s. There were two bases that trained it. You had Luke in Arizona and Tyndall in Florida. And I ended up going through Luke. We had 4 squadrons of F-15 training units there when I went through. I went through the 426 Killer Claws.
All right.
For all the claws that are still out there, that's where I went through.
So I'm going to show my ignorance here.
Go ahead. What's that?
2-seat F-15 trainer. F-15 trainer, 2-seater. Did it have controls in the rear?
Yeah. Unlike the Navy, all Air Force 2-seaters got stick, rudders, throttles in the back, and basic controls, and you put the gear down, things like that. Yep.
So what was that training like for you?
I'll tell you what, the train, it's when you first show up, they you get you do like 2-3 sims, and it's the standard training, it's all emergency procedures and just the cockpit familiarization, and then you go out on your first ride, and that's with an instructor. It's called a dollar ride. You guys probably had the same thing, and I was scared shitless walking out to that jet. You're all strapped. You got the G suit on. You're a big boy. It's you're walking out without a parachute. You just got the harness on. And I look up to that cockpit, and the F-15 cockpit's 12 feet off the ground.
Yeah, it is a monster airplane. It is long. It is wide.
It says 12 feet high, 12 feet off the ground. Really?
Yeah, the cockpit. Yeah.
Wow.
Top of the tails are 18 feet. And I look up and I was like, what did I just get myself into? And the first sortie, you're doing all the checks up front. You got an instructor in the back. It's called your dollar ride. And you get on the runway. And then when you light those candles, and back then the engines were running 24 to 25,000 pounds of thrust per side. And you're clean, no tanks, accelerate. Takeoff rolls about 800 feet, and you just go straight vertical. Instructor's got the jet. He goes straight vertical up to about 15,000, and then just accelerate on out, supersonic, take you out to the airspace. He dials up 9Gs, and you're like, good God. And came back, landed. You're like, holy shit, what just happened? And after that ride, I was like, this is for me. I've got this.
I'm in.
I am full up in. This is like the best thing in the world.
Right.
I'm at home.
I'm at home.
Yeah. It was a blast. It was unbelievable.
I would imagine that was like, for the average person that drives a SUV or a minivan. That's like strapping into a top fuel dragster.
It's here's a funny thing. It's like I finally get to my first squadron, and my mom and dad are at Langley Air Force Base, and they're looking at the jet. And my mom's never seen a fighter in her entire life. And she's like, "Hey, Mike, when are they going to let you fly the big ones?" No disrespect to my big boy brothers, because I respect them immensely. But I was like, "Mom, would a little guy rather drive a bus or a race car?" And she's like, "A race car." So I was like, "That's what this is."
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, just for size comparison, you don't have to be exact, but so you went from the T-38. Give us a wingspan and a length, nose to tail.
Okay.
And then when you went to the F-15, that thing's got to be like the size of a tennis court compared to
that's the F-15's nickname, is a tennis court. But just for comparison, the wing of a T-38, our stab is bigger than it.
Yeah.
That's
the stab is the tail. There's the tail wing, the elevator on the
horizontal tail. Yeah. It's bigger than the wing on a T-38.
Yes. So that kind of puts it in perspective.
We had a Tomcat driver on earlier, and we chatted with him, and I noticed the same thing about the F-15. The one time I went up with an F-15 is that when that airplane has planform, it darkens the sky, and when the guy turns nose on, he disappears into the sky. It's so amazing that the face-on profile of our big fighters are virtually invisible nose on from any more than about 1.5 miles to 2 miles, and. Holy smokes. And then one other quick comparison. I remember this, Father. We were going out of Kadena one day to go out and work with the AWACS guys.
Okay.
And my wingman and I got out there a little bit early, and I'm at about 20,000 feet. I check in with AWACS, and he goes, "Yeah, the range is still hot. I'm working with some F-15s some Eagles doing some BVR, beyond visual range intercepts." I'm like, okay.
I know this
and I'm thinking, well, I want to be out of their way when they go to exit the area. So I said, what altitude are they working so I know not to be in their way? And he goes, yeah, they're doing BVRs between 400 and 600. So between 40 and 60,000 feet. I'm like, yeah, I'm good here at 20.
Yeah. I'm not going to be a factor. Yeah.
Not even close. Unless the guy's got a dual engine failure, there's no chance he's going to hit me. So
it's not going to be an issue. Yeah, the Eagle can get up and go. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt.
All right, so just if you could give us bullet points, how long was the F-15 training? From start to finish, how many sorties, how many months, that sort of thing.
It was the class is really small. Kind of like when you guys went through the RAG, it's there was 6 of us going through training. We had 4 second lieutenants and then two captains who were previous. F4 Wizzos, things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So the whole course, start to finish, was about 5.5 months. And they start you out with all the basic stuff. BFM, 1v1, and those sorties were a bitch because it's the first time you're really ever doing offensive, the perch, the 6.9s in 3 sets. And when you have a face full of Eagle dial up, 8.5 G's in front of you, it kind of, first time you ever see it, it gets your attention. And
can you describe what some of that is? You just used a bunch of acronyms there. We got a lot of listeners who don't fly the Eagle. So
yeah, well, basically, BFM is our building blocks. It's called Basic Fighter Maneuvers. It's your classic 1v1 dogfighting, and it's designed to develop stick and rudder skills,
spatial orientation and awareness.
Yeah, energy management, how to control the engines, how to put what's called your lift vector, roll the jet left, right, and come on, HEs, and then also it's designed to learn precision control of employing the gun airborne, and the gun on the F-15. A lot of folks don't realize. They go, "What do you mean you only have 9.5 seconds worth of gun?" You go, "Well, when it's putting out 100 rounds per second, you don't really need that much bullets in the airplane."
That's a lot of lead going downrange fast.
It is, and I can't quite remember what they would call the dispersion rate, but basically what that is how wide the pattern is at 1,000 feet. off the nose of the airplane. And it was pretty tight. I want to say it was like 8 to 12 feet, something like that. I could be making that up, but I can't remember.
It's all right. But just you're getting close, and that's all that matters.
Yeah. So you do that. You do that offensive, and then the IPs, the instructor is like, okay, he's I don't want to say proficient because you're not proficient, but he's good enough where he's not going to hurt himself or his flight lead. And from there, then you go to defensive. Now the instructor is trying to attack you, and you're trying to defend yourself from his gun and his missiles.
Hey, Father, just to clarify, all this training is done in a single seat F-15.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, you solo on the third ride.
Okay. But you've already got your wings, so that's not
right. You have your wings. Now you solo the F-15, and then every time you go up, you're typically in a single seat by yourself with an instructor. You're always on an instructor's wing every time you go out. And then
I like the way you say that because, wait a minute, who goes up in a single seat with somebody else?
Yes.
I'm just saying, you Air Force guys, I have to question that.
Yeah. And then the next, I think when you did each phase, you may have went up with an instructor. Like I know for instance, this is the craziest one, night air refueling, there was always an instructor in the back seat.
Okay. And
that's about the craziest sortie I'd ever want to be as instructor with a student doing night refueling. Because I know I was a disaster.
Well, when we did that for the first time, night air tank, and we're by ourselves.
Yes.
Single seat. Hey, boys, go hit the tanker at night. Good luck.
Yeah, good. And that's pretty much how it is, And I do remember that first sortie too at night. The Arizona tanker unit, right there out of Phoenix, it's a bunch of old guys, and they're so used to refueling students. I remember we're up there at night. Guy could have been my dad refueling me. He's like, "All right, boys, settle down. I got you."
They're all air. That's Air Guard unit, right?
Yeah, it's all Air Guard unit.
Yeah, so they're all airline pilots. They're all you're right. They're like your dad.
Yeah, they are. I just remember him saying, "Settle down, son. I got you." Yeah, it was classic. But yeah, now I would say all in all, I think it was like maybe 45 sorties and probably 20 sims, 15 sims. And then you graduate the FTU, replacement training unit, and they send you off to your first squadron thereafter. And then when you get to your first squadron, like probably you guys know, they don't take your certificates at face value. They put you through a whole nother 3 months of hell.
Oh yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So your first fleet squadron, so to speak, was where?
What'd you call it? We called it the fleet.
We call it your first operational squadron.
Okay.
It's basically the same thing. Now you go into a real squadron.
A war ready unit.
A war ready unit. And I ended up going to Langley, Virginia, the first TAC fighter wing, 71st Ironman is the squadron I was with. When I was there were 3 squadrons of F-15s there. You had the 94th, 71st, and 27th.
Hey, how many airplanes in a squadron?
Your typical Air Force squadron has 24 fighters in per squadron. And they sometimes, though, like most of your guard units will have 18 fighters per squadron. Yep. So they're pretty big, a lot bigger than what like the Navy and the Marine Corps are used to, because they're just supersized. I can remember that first squadron. It's you just hang around the operations desk. We used to do 3 launches a day. Our typical schedule was in the morning would be 16 jets, and then around noon would be 12 jets, and then around 3 or 4 would be 10 jets. So
wow.
If you hung around the ops desk, somebody always had a meeting to go to, or they fell out. So as a lieutenant, you get a lot of sorties. It was fun. It was a really great time.
All right. So on average, when you were a new guy in your squadron, how much flying did you get? How many times a week did you fly? That's
back then, it's like, that's where I feel bad for the young kids going through now. I respect them for what they're doing, but their flying is cut, 70, 80% of what we used to get in the 80s. In the 80s, my first year at Langley, I got 400 hours. Yeah,
nice. In a tactical jet, that is a lot of flying.
Yeah, where the average kid nowadays is getting maybe 100 hours a year. So it was just a totally different time, different money. So I started flight lead upgrade at Langley, I had only been there 10 months, and I started flight lead upgrade.
And now, what's your what was your average sortie? About 90 minutes, hour to 1.5?
All said and done, average. I think my logbook says all average is about 1.2, 1.3.
Okay,
is about the average.
So that's about 370 flights to get that 400 hours. That is a lot of stinking flying.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of getting in and getting out of that jet.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I was telling somebody one day. It's like I left Langley Air Force Base with in 3 years. I left with 980 hours.
Wow.
In the F-15.
Wow.
And it was all CT training. There was, continuation training. There was no war going on. There was no doing those 8-hour caps. Although we were training for the big monster,
right.
but it never happened back then.
We were training for the Russian Bear back then. So,
yeah.
So you left there in July of '90, and then what?
Then I went to Iceland. We had a 57th Fighter Squadron in Keflavik, Iceland. Yeah, we had 22 C models there, and I went to NAS Keflavik, and I flew the F-15 there for 2 years. I left Keflavik in July of '92.
So you said you were in Iceland for the first Gulf War.
Yeah, my squadron, 71st. I was all pissed off. I was like, I left my squadron in July. Like July 10th or something. And then in August 8th, they deploy for the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got to watch it on TV just like everybody else, sitting in Iceland.
You're in good company here, Father Mike, because Repete and I were in VMA 223 on the day that Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Our squadron was the only squadron not to deploy from the East Coast. We watched the whole thing.
Oh, good God. It was just frustrating. It's like everybody else that watched it, it's like you're in your head, you're like, son of a bitch, they need me over there. There's what?
We're ready to go.
There's like 4,000 fighter guys over there, but they need me. They got to have me. But I tell you what, though, those guys did a hell of a job. And it just goes to show all the good training we had back then of how great it was. But my time in Iceland was, it was great. We had a lot of great guys up there. I got to, intercept. My total time there, I think I saw and photographed 14 Bear bombers. So, we got to do that. It was fun.
Nice.
So you guys were always intercepting Russians, basically, coming into the airspace.
Yeah, we did a lot of CT training, just like every other squadron, but we always had guys sitting 24-hour alert with jets. And back then, in the early 90s up to 92, and then we were scrambling regularly photographing the Bear bombers as they were coming up towards the what was called the Keflavik 8 is.
Right. I remember watching them fly over the Navy ship formations a lot when I was still in Hawk missiles, and we're up in the North Atlantic, up northern Norway, doing those exercises. The Bears were there constantly.
It's so funny you say that, Repete, because it just reminded me of something. The weather was bad, and the Bear. I'm about 2 miles behind a Bear bomber. He's descending down through the weather, and he's going to overfly a bunch of British warships. And the British warships target me. I see I get a Roland spike, and then I get a call that it says. The call is in his funniest British accent. I'll never forget it. He's like, "Hey, U.S. aircraft, you are being targeted by a British warship. You need to turn." I tell the guy again, I go, "Well, you need to look off my nose 2 miles because there's a Bear Delta coming down at you."
Targeting the wrong one.
Yeah, I was like, "Dude, you're targeting the wrong guy."
Right? What was his response? "Oh, sorry, mate."
Well, I'll tell you what. All of a sudden, that Roland spike went away.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It was pretty funny. It was pretty.
In a situation like that, were you in the goo?
Yeah, we were. It was soupy all the way down to maybe like 500 feet.
So you were just radar. You had a radar trail behind that dude.
Yeah.
And then did he? When you broke out, did you like fly up to his wing and
give
him the old, "Hey, I'm here, right, bro"?
He knew we were there the whole time. He's once he broke out, we accelerate back. We put an eagle left to right on his wing just to let him know, "Hey, we're here." we see you. Don't get silly.
Yeah. We can outturn you.
And back then it was just a big old game. We did it to them, they did it to us.
Right.
But I've got some
listeners.
Great pictures.
I would say Google the Bear as well. The Tu-95 Bear. That is a monster airplane. I don't remember. Does that one have counter rotating props?
And I was going to tell you, this was the first time I ever rejoined on one. This was crazy. It was like 20,000 feet. It's got the counter. It's got 4 engines, 8 props, counter rotating. Yeah. And I pull up alongside him. I'm probably 200 feet off his left wing. And I couldn't believe how loud it was in my cockpit from that guy. I mean, it was.
So that poor guy must have been deaf by the time he finished his career.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm going, holy shit, how are these guys doing it? Because if I can hear them, must be hell in there.
Deafening.
It was incredible. It was so funny. I was like, damn.
So were they showing you pictures, nudie pictures in the window when you were taking pictures?
It was so funny. Everybody was like, because if you did anything like that, it would end up at the State Department really fast.
Yeah.
So we had strict orders not to do anything like that. But I'll tell you this: the pilots up front never looked at you. They wouldn't even turn their white helmets and even look at you. But the kids in the back, these are teenagers.
Yeah.
I've got 2 good pictures. I got one kid waving a little American flag at me.
Nice.
Yes, yeah. And then
that's great.
I go underneath to take a picture, and there's a kid down there looking at a bubble, and he's holding up a Coca-Cola can with his finger up, giving me the number one, pointing at the Coca-Cola. So I got some good pictures of those kids.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and like I said, they're taking pictures of us too.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome.
Seeing what new pods or what new antennas we got on the jets, things like that. So yeah.
What kind of camera? What kind of camera were you using? Because back then nothing was digital.
No. We basically we had 2 cameras. You had back then the camera on the HUD could turn 90 degrees left, right, so you could run video of. The plane.
Nice.
But then we also had it was a classic old school Nikon, I think, 35 millimeter. You had it in your helmet bag, you take it out, lift up your visor, and start snapping pictures of the guy. Yeah. And then when you land, no kidding, when you land, if you used all the roll of film, you'd have to move off the guy and then, load in a whole new thing of 35 millimeter film, old school. Only thing missing was that old big cube, flashbulb we used to have in the 70s. Right. Yeah, that was all that was missing.
Now, hey, at night, did you do night intercepts back then?
Oh yeah, we flew in Iceland. You flew. You had no choice.
It was 24/7, right?
Yeah, you flew night.
Oh yeah, in the winter
I'm
time.
sure certain times of the. Yeah, I was going to say certain times of the year you probably only have a few hours of daylight.
Yeah, and it was really like at dusk. But you got real proficient, and back then they didn't have Air Force didn't have NVGs, so you got real proficient at just doing the night ops with heading, altitude, and a lot of comm to your flight bros.
Did you guys have on your interceptors? Did you have the big light on the fuselage that you could turn on and light them up?
No, we didn't have that thing like the Tomcat had. No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, not at all.
All right. So 2 years flying up in Iceland, and then what?
And then what happened was I was looking to go to weapons school, and a good buddy of mine calls me up, and he's like, "Hey, Missouri Guard is converting from F4s to F-15s, and they're looking for instructors." So I was like, I never even thought of the Guard, and just what a great deal. Right. So
nice.
I make a phone call, and it turns out that there's like 6 guys I flew with, and the 71st who are coming over to be instructors down in Missouri in the 110th Fire Squadron. So I call up the boss, and I tell him who I am, who I know. He talks to those guys. I get a phone call back. He's like, "Hey, Father, when can you get here? We'll bring you on full time." I was like, "Holy shit!"
Tomorrow?
So I tell the wife, I go, "Hey, I just got a full-time job in St. Louis flying F-15s." She's like, "I've never been to St. Louis." I'm like, "Me neither. We'll figure this out together." So yeah, in July '92, I left Iceland, flew to Philadelphia. Wife picked me up, and we drove to St. Louis. And when we got to St. Louis, I thought I was gonna fucking die because it was July 4th. They're having a big downtown air show.
Oh shit.
It was 108 degrees.
Yeah, and 95% humid.
And I had just come from Iceland, where the warmest it ever gets is 58.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
It was boiling hot, but at least it was humid, huh?
Yeah, it was nuts. And then I found a place to live there, and we started slowly flying our F-15s. The first batch of F-15s we got from the Air Force were their old broken down F-15A models, because they were getting rid of all their A's and going to the C models.
Yeah, so they should give the Guard all the shit.
It's exactly what they did. So it took our maintainers a good 6 months. I call it guardized, to get those things guardized, where they flew great and didn't break.
Nice.
It was amazing to see those things get up to speed. In fact, they got them up to speed so quick. It must have been like 94. We send, this is back when the Air Force had tons of money, big long arrow competition where all these fighters come out to the Nellis Rangers, and it's a big composite war, and it's all graded. And our old crappy A models, led by a guy named Gumby, we win the whole competition. And,
all right.
And the active duty was not happy because they're flying new C models. Some of the guys had data link. They were all mishap jets. None of ours were mishap jets, which is the multi-stage improvement program. We were just old steam-driven A models.
Right.
So the AD was not happy.
You guys whipped their ass.
Yeah, it was funny. It was a testament to our maintainers, and it also was a testament to the guys that we were hiring from the active duty, because we hired like 20 something guys off the active duty.
Age and experience wins every time.
It always does.
Did you guys carry over any F4 guys from the?
They did. I didn't know all the F4 guys, but that was a real contentious time. When the unit was converting, because right or wrong, some guys had to go, some guys had to stay. And that was a real tough time in St. Louis, how everybody was picked. But we ended up converting, I'd say maybe probably 10 guys. 10 guys converted to the F-15 from the F-4.
Okay.
So, yeah, but it was that was a real tough time for the unit, because there was a lot of guys that probably should have converted, didn't. And that all had happened right before I had got there. So the first couple of years was kind of tough.
Hey, something I thought of, I want to touch on here.
Yeah.
Just so our listeners can understand. So you went from active duty Air Force to the Air Guard. Uh-huh. And what's kind of a and when I say Air Guard, I'm going to lump in reserves, because it's the same. And what most people don't understand is you're a part-time. Now I know you were full-time, but you had part-time traditional pilots in your squadron. Most of them, right, were traditional guys.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Well, my point is most people don't understand that when you're a reservist or a guardsman flying in a fighter unit or a helicopter unit or whatever kind of aviation unit you're in, you have the exact same flight training requirements to keep up with as your active duty counterparts. Correct?
Absolutely true.
Exact. And you're doing it on a part-time basis.
Well, you see,
not really.
That's also the other Fig, you bring up a great point, because that's also the other fallacy. Folks just think we fly 1 week in a month. It's like, no, we fly Monday through Friday plus 1 week in a month.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. I will say this: the hardest time of my life ever was when I was part-time guardsman and part-time airline guy, because you are on the road constantly and you're juggling, your family, the military, and the airlines, and all the currencies and crap that go with that. Yeah, you're a busy hombre.
It's tough.
Yes, it is absolutely tough.
So I know personally, because I know you personally, that you were in that unit for you got there in July '92, and I'm not sure when did you stay until the end?
Stay until the end.
Okay,
when
was
right
that?
to the end. I think the last jet finally left the ramp. The last F-15 left in late 2009, early 2010. I was Squadron Commander in 2005 when the BRAC report came down that we were basically base realignment, closure, BRAC. We were being converted from the F-15 to the B-2 bomber out at Whiteman. So that was a tough time because the St. Louis unit, the 110 Fighter Squadron, started out as the 110th Aerial Observation Squadron, had been at Lambert since 1917. So it was a real tough time, very tough time.
A lot of tradition down there, just shy of 100 years. Yeah. Wow.
We had been on that patch of land since 1917. So it was,
That's rough.
Yeah, it really was.
I knew you were the squadron commander. How many years did you have the squadron?
I had squadron for 3 years. And then
that's great.
I was getting burned out. And a good buddy of mine, he was my opso, a guy named Snake. I talked to him and I was like, hey, you deserve to be squadron commander. I'm going to talk to the wing commander. I'd like to see you, shut this place down with grace and dignity. And he's a fabulous guy. And he ended up taking the squadron in the last basically year and a half and shut it down gracefully. In fact, him and another guy flew the last 2 Eagles off St. Louis ramp forever.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was pretty sad day. But
so we, you and I have a mutual acquaintance that was in your unit, and he was crew chief, Fatty.
Fatty, love him.
Yeah, it's as do I. He's my adopted little brother, and so you guys hired him to be a pilot, and then we gained him because you guys got bracked. My unit gained him. Yeah, you guys gained a good man. You absolutely did. We'll have Fatty on some other time because he's kind of a historical guy himself. He became Repete, just so you know, he became the very first monocular Air Force pilot qualified to fly.
No kidding! Wow.
Ever, yeah. And Father Mike had a lot to do with that, by the way, because at the time he was at the the Guard Bureau or the Pentagon. I was at both. Basically, I was a Guard Bureau guy. Yep, exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly. All right. Well, I'm going to ask you this to tell this story because you told it to me years ago. You were doing some BFM with one of your squadron mates. I think he was a lieutenant.
You shoot down another airplane? Did I hear?
Yeah. I know the story you're going to talk about, Fig.
Yeah. So would you tell us that story, please?
This happened in 2007, 2 November, at exactly 10:11 in the morning, and.
Isn't it funny? Repete. This is a common occurrence when we get guys to tell us a story. Well, that has it's a big story.
They're down to the minute.
To the minute. What day? What time? What the weather conditions were? What kind of aftershave I was wearing.
Yes,
I mean, so yes. I'm not going to interrupt you more, Father Mike. Go.
No, you guys, you can interrupt all through because this whole story has about 1,000 pieces. But to put this in context, I consider myself the luckiest guy in the world. The only time I ever lost currency ever in the F-15 was on 2 November 2007. I went 20 years straight and never lost landing currency, never lost any currencies in the F-15 until this particular day. What basically had happened was, first off, as Fig mentioned earlier, it was a beautiful day. We were scheduled to go out with a 4-ship. We were going to do ACM, which is air combat maneuvering. But number 4, he did not have 30-day currency, so he couldn't do ACM. So we said, all right, this is what we'll do. We'll all brief up together and we'll take off together and we'll hit out the airspace and we'll split up to 2 separate 2 ships. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do separate BFM, basic fighter maneuvers is the plan. And on this fateful day, what happens is we brief up, everything goes good, beautiful day in St. Louis. We take off at 9:50 local, and it's a classic St. Louis fall day. Clearing 1,000,000, 10 plus miles, not a cloud to be had. Jets are clean. Climb up to the block, 2022. Do all our checks and head out to the MOA. We get to the airspace, split off. I tell 3 and 4, you guys go to the west side of the airspace, 1 and 2. We're going to take the center, my wingman. We're going to take the center. So that day, our call sign is MIC 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm MIC 1. I'm Squadron Commander. One of our young guys, MIC 2, we call him a young guy. He only had 1,500 hours in the Eagle, but compared to the rest of us, he was a baby. I had at the time, I think I had like a little over 3,800 hours in the Eagle.
Wow.
As we go on out. He's in aircraft tail. He's a C model single seat. I'm in a single seat. He's in tail 80034. And the reason I know that is because I have the gun barrel is up in my office chromed as a nice gift.
Yeah, the gun barrel's from that airplane?
The gun barrel is from that airplane.
Okay.
And this was that fateful day that I don't know if you guys heard in the Marine Corps, but it was that fateful day that the entire, because of this sortie, the entire F-15 fleet, A's, C's, and the E models, and every F-15 flown in the world were grounded.
Nice job, Father.
Because they had no idea what the hell just happened, because what had just happened had never happened in the history of anything. So we go out, and he wants to do offensive basic fighter maneuvers. So I'm defensive. So we're going to do the first set. We're going to do a what's called the 9,000 perch. And for the viewers, you start basically 2 miles line abreast. And I call check left 45. So we check left 45. So now I'm out front. He's pointing at me. He gets a radar lock at me. As soon as I hear the spike, I reverse my turn. We're at 18,000 feet. And he's counting down 12,000, 11,000, 10,000, then fights on. And his goal is to try to employ missiles and employ the gun on me. So we do the first set, and it goes okay. Not great. He can do better. So we're down at around 5,000 feet. We're doing a slow climb back up to 18,000 feet. And I do a fuel check. And I'm like, you want to do that again? I think I said, you want to see that again? He's like, yeah, I'm going to see that again. So we go, okay. And we start I call check left. And I get the spike. I reverse my turn. I'm in a right-hand turn at 18,000 feet. I'm doing 430. He
430 knots.
430 knots. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
He's counting down 12,000, 11,000, 10,000. At 9,000 feet, he calls fights on. So I continue with the right-hand brake turn, HE's turning into him. And I'm probably 10 degrees nose low, looking up through the canopy. And he unloads, rolls out, accelerates to 450 knots. And then he rolls, puts his lift vector right on my airplane. In the simplest terms is he puts his helmet pointing right at my airplane, and he dials up HE's. He quickly rolls out and unloads the airplane to about a G.5 and makes a knock it off call, which, as we all know, that's if you ever hear that, that's everybody stop fighting, cease, clear your flight path, get your shit in one sock and acknowledge it. So I acknowledge MiG-1, knock it off. Typically, in that phase of flight, the knock it off is just usually like knock it off, because the F-15 doesn't have what's called a G limiter. So at that, when you unload and roll and pull at 450 knots, we get a lot of over G's right there, where you overstress the airplane and you have to knock it off. But this time he makes a really panicked knock it off. So I keep turning into him, and I'm looking at his airplane. I'm looking up at his airplane, and his airplane is in a 15-degree bank, 10 degrees nose high. And all of a sudden I see the nose starts wobbling left and right. And then within a second and a half later, the cockpit right behind the ejection seat snaps off from the airplane.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So this thing, it was surreal. And it is tattooed in my head for eternity. I can explain every detail, but it snapped off. The cockpit snapped right off from the F-15 about 10 inches behind where the canopy hinge, what's called the hinge pin is. If you ever seen F-15, you know that hinge in the back, it snaps right there.
Wow.
So when it snaps up, the cockpit snaps up vertically. So the pointy end of the cockpit's pointing up to the sky, and his ass is pointing at the ground. And I can see him sitting in the cockpit. I could see he's got his green G suit on. He's got two white lineup cards, one on each knee, and I could see his hand on the stick.
Could you see the cartoon question marks coming out of his helmet?
This guy, I love him. He is his call sign's Crow. He's recovered. He's flying for. He's captain. He's doing great. But at that particular time, I could not believe what the hell just happened. This was just effing unbelievable, and everything.
I got. So right before the cockpit snapped in half, or right before the cockpit detached from the fuselage, he was going in excess of 400 knots, right?
He was doing exactly 450 knots.
So when the cockpit snapped and the nose went up, now he's doing, I don't know, what kind of G is that in a weird plane?
It was insane amount of G's, and we'll talk about the injuries he sustained, but it was so many G's that it ended up, you know how strong the lap belts are in a fighter?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He tore the left lap belt in half.
Oh dear God.
Yeah. Wow. So think about that.
I would have thought that his body would have given away before the lap belt, but
his body should have exploded. But Crow is he's a big boy. If it was my skinny ass, I would have smeared like a gnat. But Crow is he's a big old Missouri farm boy, tough as nails.
I remember you telling me that. If it was you, you would have been dead.
Oh, I would have popped like a water balloon in that.
Oh.
Well, that's you and me both, buddy.
It was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So at that point there, the only thing I can yell out is eject, eject, eject. So I yell eject, eject, eject. And as I'm yelling that, I'm turning into his airplane and I'm slowly climbing up. And the cockpit rolls right. And then I see like this, it looks like a cheap Chinese firecracker go off. Look, I'm looking right at the cockpit. And the cockpit, it's like rolling like a bingo wheel. It rolls back up towards me, and now the cockpit is just dark. He's ejected out of the airplane at this point, out of the cockpit, because the airplane's gone.
Yeah.
I don't realize he ejected, so I yell eject, eject. Eject, eject again, and I climb up, and now I tell my other two F-15s who are west of me about 20 miles. I call them a common radio. I tell those guys, hey, knock it off, knock it off. Bud 2 just broke in half. And they're like, what? I'm like, knock it off, knock it off. I go, come up my freak, get above 24,000 and come where I am. And I'll talk to you guys later. So now the F-15, the engines are still running. It's perfectly intact F-15. I look at it and it's flat plated, straight looking back at me. It's the engines are pointing at the ground, and where the cockpit would be, it's gone. It's just the two intakes is pointing at the sky, and it does a complete flip and then stops. So it just does one flip and then stops perfectly. And then I look at it, and the main landing gear are extending, and I'm like, what the fuck is that? Well, yes, when the cockpit broke off, it pulled the emergency gear extension. So the gear free fell out.
Oh, that's funny.
So then the jet goes into this perfect flat spin, just perfect, falling down. The cockpit is off its right 2 o'clock, maybe a half mile, and there's all sorts of debris in the air. The internal ICS boxes, which are our jamming boxes and things like that. I see those things falling out. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, where? But then I'm like, where is Crow? Where is Crow?
Hey, Father, is all this stuff coming past your canopy? I mean, are you not flying yet. Through the? Okay. All right.
Not yet.
Okay.
This is where I become dumb. I remember it. I roll up. I'm at about 18,500 feet. And now I'm looking straight down on the F-15 falling, the cockpit falling, and all the debris. And I can't see Crow. I can't see him anywhere. And all of a sudden, at about 14,000 feet, I see a white and orange parachute. I'm like, yes, thank God he got out. Because up until then, I couldn't see him at all. I didn't know where he was.
Oh boy.
So now I see the parachute blossom out. I'm like, yes, he's out. He's floating down. This is what I want to say. So this is where I would tell viewers, if you ever see an F-15 break in half, don't take your jet, which is perfectly good, and stick it in the middle of the debris field. Because that's what I did.
Okay, so learning occurred.
All right.
Yeah.
You know not to do that again.
I have to tell you, of everything I read about tactical aviation, there's no manual that says don't do that. So basically what happens is I'm at 18,005 and I roll pointing down vertically. I'm pointing right at the crow's parachute. I'm about maybe at this point now 5,000 feet above it. And I want to go and see him. As I'm coming down, I've got the throttles in idle and I'm doing maybe 300 knots, accelerating. And all of a sudden I see this, I tell the accident board in the investigation in the following days, I go, all of a sudden I see this big gray park bench coming at me. And what it is, it's about a 6 foot, 8 foot side of the F-15 that's been ripped off the jet and it's just floating down. And all of a sudden I see light gray and then it flips to that internal, that lime green paint.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I realize what the hell it is. And I am going to smash right into it. So I take the stick and I slam it into my lap. I bury it. So my nose now jacks up. I do like 7 G's. I'm like, oh, holy shit. So now I look up and I tell the accident board, I go, now there's a beer keg coming at me. and what it is, it's called the ECS turbine of the F-15. And what that is, it supplies all of our air conditioning and pressurization for the cockpit of the F-15. And it looks like a giant beer keg. And it is coming right at me. And there's nothing I can do. So I do what every fighter pilot does. I duck. I duck, and it goes flying right over my head. And, through the tails, doesn't touch a thing.
Right between the twin tails.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So I end up now, I'm like, holy shit, my heart's going. I'm like, whoa. So I go, let's be smart about this. So now I just start a left-hand turn at 250 knots above crow's parachute. I go, he's going to be the last thing that hits the ground. Everything's going to hit the ground first. So I'm just orbiting above it. And then I watch the F-15 hit the ground and it lands in this massive wooded area. And it's like slow motion. It just came down, hit the trees. And then it's like 1,001, all the trees fall. You see them all fall. And then you go 1,002. And then all of a sudden the jet just explodes. It had we were clean that day. We had no external tanks. So at the accident, we had done one set flying out. He had maybe, say, 7,500, 8,000 pounds of fuel on board.
Wow.
And it just explodes. And then I see the cockpit hit. And the cockpit didn't burn. It just hit the ground like a bag of hammers. Just boom. That was it. So now, and then I see.
There's no fuel up there, so
Exactly. So then I'm watching, and and I see a lot of the internal boxes hit the ground, and they just look like little puffs of smoke. They're just impacting the ground. That's all. So now crow's about maybe 9,000 feet above the ground, floating down. So I'm like, okay, I gotta go see my brother. So I come down and I start circling him, and I see him in the parachute, and he's got his helmet on. And tell the viewers I'm getting really close to him. He's got his visor down, his helmet, his mask is still on, and he's laying he's all slumped over in the parachute.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, come on, Crow, wave to me, wave a foot, do something, because I thought he was dead. I honestly thought he was dead. Because it was such a violent thing.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, I've got to see him. So I'm getting closer to him and closer to him. I'm passing him by like 50 feet. Yeah. I'm like
thumping him good with that wake turbulence.
yeah, well, exactly right. And I'm like, come on, man, wave at me, do something. And the next day, Crow's like this. He's like, you son of a bitch. He goes, I thought you were gonna fucking hit me. But I was like, man, I needed you to wave at me.
All you had to do was wave me off, man.
Yeah, I go, all I needed you to do was wave, something. So I'm watching him go down, and we're in southern Missouri, and it's a lot. We're over by the Mark Twain Forest area, and it's just pretty much Mark Twain Forest, which is all it is, a lot of forest. And he's coming down, and I'm like, we're never going to find him. He is going to land in the woods, and we're never going to find him. But unbeknownst to me, as he's getting down below about 100 feet, he's got one arm that is usable. So he's able to kind of steer the parachute into like this, without exaggeration. I'm saying the clearing was probably 20 yards by 20 yards, if that. It may have even been smaller.
Wow.
He comes right down in there and hits that ground like a big thud. Parachute comes down, and then he's just laying there. So now I'm orbiting overhead, and I switch over to 243 nothing, which is the
guard,
the
emergency
guard
frequency. Yeah,
for the military. And I'm trying to talk to him on the radio. I see him on the ground, and he's not moving. There's nothing going on. So at this point now, I climb up, and the whole time I leave my tape on because everything in the cockpit's filmed and recorded. I purposely leave my tape on, and I'm talking to it for the accident report. I'm like, hey, I'm going down to 200 feet. I go, I know I'm not allowed to do this, but I'm doing it, at orbiting around. And my other two F-15s I mentioned earlier, they're still up above me at 24,000 feet. I direct one of them to go to call operations, which is the squadron ops. Mm-hmm. And then I direct the other guy to go on the Kansas City Freak to go, hey, are there any tankers airborne? Is there any military assets out here that can help us? Help us get Crow out. So we find a Civil Air Patrol guy in a 172. He's about 75 miles east of us, surveying the marijuana fields that grow out in Missouri. I send one of the F-15s to go get that guy. I need him. And I forget though how long it takes a 172 to go 70 miles.
Oh yeah, that's almost an hour.
It was eternity. So finally he goes out, finds this guy. We get him up on Freak. We got Victor capability in the F-15, so we're talking to the guy, and which seemed like 3 hours. It probably was 10, 15 minutes. We finally get this guy over to me. And I'm talking to him. I'm trying to talk his eyes on where Crow is.
Right. And just real quickly, you called it Victor capability for the listeners. That's the ability to talk on the VHF frequencies that the civil airplanes speak on. Military is usually on a uniform or UHF frequency.
Yeah.
But some birds can do both, the Harrier, the Eagle, Tomcat.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Nope. That's a good call. So if I'm like, he can't get his, he can't find him on the ground. So I'm finally like, yeah, do a turnaround at point. He's like, yeah. I go, okay, I'll call you a turn, and I just need you to do turnaround at point, because at this time I've been at like 200 feet and I'm doing like 275 knots, which is not a lot of gas. I'm burning a lot of gas. And also, even though it's only 270 knots at 200 feet, it's like I've been doing like this 3.5, 4G turn for like 20 minutes. So my skinny ass was getting a little tired.
Getting fatigued.
I was getting a little fatigued. So finally at Crow ejected at exactly 10:11. At 10:40, I'm bingo fuel, which means I've got to go home. So I start flying home, and my other two F-15s, they find a St. Louis LifeLock or Safe Flight or something. It's one of those medical rescue rescue helicopter.
Yeah,
just happens to be like 80 miles away. So They end up getting him on Freak, direct him in. The locals on the ground have finally found Crow in the woods, and they end up picking him up, get him on the life rescue helicopter, and from the time he hit the ground, 40 minutes later, he was in the helicopter en route to Barnes Jewish Hospital in St. Louis.
How about that?
Yeah, and what was
Nice.
what was the worst part was the whole way flying home, which was only from where he ejected to St. Louis, was only maybe 10, 15-minute flight. I thought my wingman was dead. I land, and I felt like rubber dog shit. I was just I couldn't believe what just happened. Horrible. And Willie B, he was our SOF.
Yeah.
He comes out and he goes, "They got him. He's okay."
Wow.
I'm like,
Nice.
and I'm like, thank God. But Crow, it took a long time to recover. He was pretty beat up from that ejection. That ejection was massively violent, and everything that could have went wrong in that ejection went wrong. So he was one beat up kid. But if any of your viewers want to read the report, it's actually it's in the public archives, the AIB, it's called Accident Investigation Board, and it's published there. It's pretty scrubbed down report, but it gives you the general idea of what happened. You know,
So what would they put in as a Google search term? What do you think?
if they just actually Google Air Force accident reports,
Okay.
they'll find it. And the report was, I think, published in February of 2008.
Okay.
And because of that accident, they made this public. They tried to do it really fast because it impacted every F-15 in the entire world. We ended up being grounded until they actually found out what was wrong. For probably 4 months, we were grounded.
Oh, man.
The F-15Es, they came back flying maybe 2-3 weeks later, but the single seat fleet, we were grounded for a good 4 months until the accident board definitively found out what had happened. They were like, it was a catastrophic failure of what's called the upper longeron. And in the simplest terms, most fighters are built with two upper longerons and two lower longerons. In the simplest terms, those are I-beams that bolt in to connect to the main fuselage of the fighter jet.
Okay.
Stiffens the fuselage.
Yeah.
So
And what had happened was Air Force had never inspected those pieces of material. And we had a batch of F-15s that were manufactured incorrectly. They were too thin, or the material wasn't the right rigidity, if that's a word.
rigidity.
Yeah. So once and that's what the accident board found out. What had happened was the right upper longeron had developed a crack over the years. And then on that particular day, it decided to fully break. And then what had happened was the other three longerons were unable to carry the load, and it just snapped.
So I bet when he unloaded, to go outside the turn and then slap the G back on, he felt this snap. Probably heard it sound like probably a cannon going off.
If you talk to him, the first thing he says he remembers, he had no idea what happened. But what he had thought first was when he unloaded and came back on the G, he didn't hear it crack, but what it did is it cracked the cockpit. So all the pressurization in the cockpit dumped. So
that's when he called knock it off.
That's when he called knock it off. So the whole cockpit filled up with debris from the floor and mist. So he couldn't see. And then right after that is when the cockpit snapped. And when it snapped, it ripped the canopy off from the back to the front.
So he was in a convertible immediately.
He was in a convertible immediately. Wow. And his initial thing was he knew the canopy ripped off. He thought in his head, oh, it ripped off and hit the tails, ripped the tails off. I'm out of control. So he's in there trying to fight this thing to get it back under control, where there wasn't a chance in hell.
Yeah, he was moving.
Jet was non-responsive.
Stick was not connected to any flight control.
So
wow.
And when the canopy ripped off backwards, it hit his left shoulder, broke his shoulder. What's the bone between the elbow and the shoulder? What's that?
Oh, the humerus.
It shattered that like a bamboo stick.
Oh.
And then it smacked his helmet, and then on the Aces 2 ejection seat, I'm sure the Martin Baker has too. We got 2 pitot tubes left and right.
Yeah, takes a sample of the air so it knows high speed, low speed, high altitude, low altitude.
Exactly. It sheared the left pitot tube off and damaged the upper
new static port.
Yeah.
So the seat kind of went dumb at that point, didn't it?
Yeah. So when he finally ejected, he was only able, unlike the Martin Baker, the Aces 2, we have two side pulls, left and right of your thighs. You could pull one. Ideally, you want to pull both. He was only able to pull the right-hand handle. And
the left shoulder destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, the seat actually worked as advertised. It blasted. He ejected at 18,000, got a drogue suit at 14.5, slowed him down, and then thereafter the parachute deployed out.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah. So yeah, but once all said and done, when we get back on the ground, nobody is believing anybody that an F-15 broke in half.
Right.
Yeah, they don't do that.
No.
Oh, that doesn't happen.
We're all worried about Crow in the hospital. We find out, he's okay. He's stabilized. They've got him all good. So we're all up in the squadron. Everyone's talking to me. They confiscate our tapes. We're all pissing in bottles for drug tests and things like that. That day, that night once we find everything's good, we have quite a few beers. And here's the funny part. I get home, and prior to getting home, I called my wife up. I go, hey, you may hear something on the news. I'm going to let you know. We're all good. Everybody's good. Can't talk.
Yeah.
But I get home, and then I'm getting a lot of phone calls from all my bros throughout the whole Air Force.
Sure. And news like that travels really fast in a community.
What did you do?
What did you do?
That's what everybody was like that. But I get this one phone call from the ACC commander. He's the Air Force's 4-star that runs Tactical Air Command.
So that's Air Combat Command.
Yeah. Well, I get a call from his what do you call it? Aide. It's usually like a colonel or a 1-star. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah, bullshit. I hang up on him.
Yeah, right. This guy, no.
So he calls again. And I'm like, yeah, bullshit. Hang up on him. Then the 4-star calls.
Yeah, bullshit.
Well, I pick up the phone. He's like, Father, this is General so-and-so. Don't hang up. So,
that's
yeah.
rich.
And the thing that's so funny is I'm at home, and it was probably like at 9:30 at night, and I'm standing there, I got my T-shirt on, I'm in my underwear, and now I'm like, holy shit, this really is the 4-star calling my house.
Yeah. And
he's like, what happened? So I tell him the quick story. He's like, no way. I go, yeah, sir, it broke in half. And then about 2 days later, they get an accident board together, and they come out and they interview us all. And turns out when they go out and they get the wreckage is the jet and the cockpit are a half mile apart, and then it's about a 3 mile long debris field. And they're like, yeah, he was right. This jet broke in half. In my description of the breakup, I was 6 inches off from where it actually broke.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to ask you a question, because you gave me this story when it was pretty fresh.
Yeah.
In person. We were down in operations at a undisclosed airport somewhere in the world. You said you told, and you skipped it, so I don't know if you don't want to talk about this, that's fine. There was a farmer on the ground.
Yeah.
Could you tell that part?
Yeah, basically, what had happened was, you get a big explosion on the ground. Everyone's going to the big explosion because that's where that's where all the cool shit is. But that's not where the air breather is. So what it happens is a young girl, she sees the parachute come down. And then she tells her dad, then the dad wants to go find, he wants to go with the wreckages. And she's like, no, over here. So this guy, young farmer out there, gets in his 4-wheeler, and he ends up going out and finding Crow in the woods where everybody else is at the F-15 wreckage. He's the guy who finds Crow out in the woods. And Crow is out there in the woods. He hasn't taken his helmet off, hasn't done anything. And the first thing you talk to Crow, he's pretty funny. He sees the farmer's face and he can tell right away from the farmer's face that he is one messed up hombre. Crow is. So the farmer goes through Crow's survival gear, pulls out the radio, and hands it to Crow. And Crow's in shock, in and out, and he doesn't even touch it. He's just like, he tells the farmer, leave me alone. Don't touch anything. Get help. But yeah, this young girl is the one that, saved a lot of valuable time in pointing to where Crow went down.
So
that's awesome.
So what I was getting at is, like, it seems like you told me when the farmer was on his way there. This is when you were down at 200 feet.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Refresh me here, because
so you said that. So you were making passes. You were still trying to assess Crow's condition.
Yeah, this is so.
Right?
I totally forgot about this. Yeah, because they end up finding the guy and interviewing him, and every time I was coming back over Crow, the guy would run away because he thought I was coming in to strafe him. I was protect my wingman. He had every time I was coming in, the guy would duck for cover, or he'd get on his 4-wheeler and run away because he thought I was coming in to strafe him and attack him. Yeah.
Oh,
I had forgot about that part. Yeah. And the thing is, I never saw the guy on the ground. I saw cars and everything else, but I never really saw that guy on the ground.
Yeah.
What a great story. People are afraid that don't know are afraid of the military. They don't know what we're going to do. We're just guys, but they don't know that.
I'm down at 200 feet, and the eagle's a pretty loud bird.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I'm sure it sounded like Armageddon every time you came over.
Oh, I know it did. So yeah. Well, yes.
The detail that you have and the fact that vivid details. So, a spatial, what's that called? Repeat spatial. You hear it a lot.
Spatial and time compression, or
time compression. Guys that have a traumatic event, it's usually in an airplane. Things slow way down, and you see, like every time we've heard an ejection story, we heard from Nasty and also Jake. They're like, I remember seeing the airplane go away. I remember looking at the side number and the details, the things that happen when really it's impossible to think that you can catch something in a fraction of a second, but you have this great detail.
Nasty said he remembered sitting there wondering, is the ejection seat not going to work? Because he had pulled the handle and he watched the canopy slowly come away from the airplane. And then he's kind of sitting there, was this thing going to go or not? Bam! Then it booted him in the ass. Said he hurt his back.
Father, says, I see the airplane broke. It broke right here, and you were, damn near spot on. And then, here comes a keg of beer at me.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it is so true. It's just time slow. Well, your mind slows everything down, and the detail you see is amazing. It's just amazing.
That's
awesome,
and the clarity you can hear, it's unbelievable.
Well, thank you for that story.
Yeah, that's it's the story that grounded the fleet.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I know we've been going for a while, Repeat.
Yeah.
What else you got? Anything else you want to disclose or talk about?
Did you ever pull the handle? Did you ever?
Yeah.
No.
Never reach for the handle.
Thought about it. Never reached it.
Yeah.
I think I had like 2. Everybody's got those. First off, flying fighters is dangerous. It just is. It just is. And for the civilian public, is a lot of guys and girls think that we, anytime we get in trouble, we pull the handles and eject. But the truth be told, that's like the last thing any of us ever wanted.
Right. And in fact, I would argue that more pilots have died in denial.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not pulling that handle. I am not pulling that handle. They're going to bring the airplane back, and it's frequently, cause of death. It didn't in these words exactly, but cause of death was late ejection.
Yes. I've had times where 2 sorties where I thought I was going to die and without even ejecting. There was no way I had time ever to eject. And F-15 would do a lot of air-to-air.
Yeah. So it's like a near midair.
Yeah. I had, this one I remember as young wingman, we're out over off Oceana fighting F-18s, training, and 2 separate air-to-air fights come together, which happens. And I look up, and I am looking right at an F-18 coming right at me. And I remember saying to myself, I was probably like 27 at the time. I'm like, fuck, I'm dead. And that's all I say. And within a millisecond, he passes right by me. I could hear him. I could see I could see the rivets on his tank. I could see the gun door. I see everything we pass. Yeah. And I'm like, wow.
That was close.
I'm still here. So I do everything wrong thereafter. You're supposed to knock it off and think, I go, fuck it. I'm a young wingman. I just keep fighting.
Yeah.
I'm going to shoot his ass for that.
Yeah. But, you always have those, and it's going to happen. It's just a dangerous business. It's just a dangerous business. But I will say, loved every second of it. I feel like I'm the most privileged guy in the world to have had the opportunity to do what I did. It was great. Loved it. That's awesome. Wouldn't give it up for a second.
And if your roommate hadn't talked you into taking the test, where would you be today? You'd be an accountant.
Who knows? Who knows? What the heck I'd be doing? But yeah, it was just a phenomenal time. The whole experience, as you guys know, the friends you meet, the bonds, they're for eternity.
Oh, you got that right, buddy.
Yeah.
We would all die for our brothers.
I just thought of a kind of off the cuff question.
Yeah.
And it's a rhetorical question. I know the answer already, but I'm going to ask it just so it's out there. So anybody that's flown tactical jets, especially somebody like you who had a lot of experience in tactical jets, it takes a toll on your body.
Gotcha.
Are you comfortable talking about, what kind of aches and pains you have now? Because
what's so funny is every one of my brothers and sisters that have flown the jet for a long, long time, every one of them have neck and back injuries. Yeah. Big time surgeries, compressed discs, fused necks, things like that.
Yep.
Me, on the other hand, I never had a neck injury ever, never hurt my back ever. But what happened to me on my last sortie ever in the F-15, unbeknownst to me, I was out doing a basic fighter maneuver, and I do about a 8.7 G turn, and I feel a little sting in my eye, and I think it's just sweat. So I wipe the sweat off. I keep fighting, land, go home, wake up the next day. I can't see out of my eye. It's just total black. What had happened was I had a lot of guys get detached retinas and things like that. I actually ruptured my retina. And what happens thereafter, it's like 50-50. There's absolutely nothing they can do. I'll give you the technical term. The retina goo leaks back to the cones and damages the cones. Some guys don't get any injuries. Some guys do. What happened to me was I lost about 85% of my color vision in my right eye, and then my eye is only correctable to 2100. So wow. It's permanently damaged. So I never had a back injury or neck injury, but I've got this eye injury. So I'm one for one.
On your last stinking flight too, right?
On your last one. How about that?
I said it was my last flight, unbeknownst to me. I got told.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I got told. Yeah. So the
gotcha.
flights
Okay. So that's kind of like my wallet. Where's your wallet? I found it, and it's always in the last place you look. Yeah. You don't keep looking if you find it. So
exactly.
Yeah, you would have kept flying if it hadn't been the injury. Okay.
The flight surgeon came up and he's like, "Hey, father," he goes, "With that kind of injury," he goes, you're medically grounded until we figure out what to do, where to go. And at that point there, to tell you honestly, I wouldn't wish the injury on anybody, but I had been in the jet for almost 23 years straight.
That's a great run, buddy.
So it is a great run.
It really was. And as we all know, it's a young person's game. So it was time to let someone else do it.
Right on. Yeah.
So I would have preferred to had a nice end of training flying, things like that. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. So, hey, we all know it's coming to an end somehow. We just don't know how.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, and things, it happens. It happens.
Well, Father, I want to say thank you for your service. Thanks for stepping up. And
thanks to you. Thanks to you guys too. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure having you today. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out here. Father, thank you for joining us. I hope you'll come back at some point in the future and join us.
I absolutely will if you have me.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you've got a lot more good stuff. In 23 years, I'm guessing you have one or two more stories you might be able to share.
I could probably squeak out one more.
I know for a fact there's more stories in there because you've told me more stories. You need to just right. Next time we do this, we'll do this in the evening and have a cocktail, and that usually breaks a
story or two loose. There you go. So, all right.
Well, thank you, Father, for joining us.
Now, I hear
truly an honor.
All right,
Indeed,
thanks for having me. Repeat. You take care, brothers.
It is. All right. Well, I also want to thank Dave Hamilton over at the Mac Geek Gab. MacGeekGab.com is where you can find him. That's the best tech podcast going. Dave helped us put all this together and has made So There I Was possible. If you have any questions or if you have any questions of Father, we can get them to him. You just write to us. Email fig@sothereiwas.us or repeat@sothereiwas.us. You can find us on Facebook at sothereiwas.us/Facebook, on Twitter at sothereiwas.us/Twitter. I also want to take another quick opportunity here and mention an upcoming advertiser. It's at robinsbirdbreedingdesigns.com or EB, that's Echo Bravo 4.us/aviation gift. And it's a gift for the aviator that has everything. A set of 4 handsome coasters, each boasting a different engraved flight instrument on them. And if you have a light airplane, you can have your tail number engraved on them or your call sign or the last name of your favorite pilot, whatever you'd like on there. robinsbirdbreedingdesigns.com will custom make these for you. So for those of our listeners who are non-aviators but have an aviator that you'd like to give a Christmas gift to, there you go. In the meantime, thank you, Father, for your service. Thank you, Fig, for your service. We'll see everybody next week, and check 6.
I hope do not press means press right away. Mistakes were made. Marge will clean this mess up later.